Okay, it's late, so I'm going to see if I can knock this out fairly quick. This is Cplr 210, two questions. One is 210A and the second one is 210B, but they're related on this under the same section. The section is death of a claimant or person liable, cause of action accruing after death and before grant of letters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the quick answers to these questions. I'm going to delve into the answers in the Quizzer, and then I'm going to read through the actual Cplr. So you'll have 3 parts to this video. So this is relating to Quizzer question 30 and 31. 30 is related to the claimant. In other words, someone who's entitled to commence an action. 31 is related to the person against whom a cause of action exists, and both of them passing away. So let's start with question 30. If a person entitled to commence an action dies before the time has expired within which to bring the action survives, the action may be commenced by his representatives. And the answer is C, within 1 year after the person's death. Okay, and then I also want to point out the word may. Okay, just keep that in mind regarding the claimant. The reference to the action may be commenced by his representative. Okay, that's question 30. So for the claimant, it's within 1 year after the person's death. Stay tuned for more about that. Question 31, again, this is Cplr 210B. If a person against whom a cause of action exists dies, again, we're saying against whom a cause of action exists dies, would have been defendant. The time limited for commencement of an action against his executor or administrator is told by, remember, told means time stops running, by B, 18 months. So let's delve a little further into that. Those are the quick answers. So for claimant, aka would have been plaintiff, a year from the person's death. For person against whom cause of action, aka would have been defendant, 18 months. So let's look at the answers. Okay, so for the first one regarding the claimant, aka would have been plaintiff, he or she passes away. Claimant 210A, this is regarding the plaintiff, allows a representative to sue within 1 year after the death of the claimant. This is technically not a tolling provision, since it allows the representative to sue within 1 year after the claimant's death if it is needed, and that's bolded, if it is needed. Therefore, the representative has 1 year from death or the original statute of limitations, whichever is longer. Remember, I talked about may. This is the may. There's a choice here. Whichever is longer, either the original statute of limitations or 1 year from the plaintiff's death. The 1 year period is, in bold again, an alternative period. So that's the difference between if the claimant, aka would have been plaintiff, passes away, and as opposed to the defendant, which we're going to get to that answer more in depth next. So again, the wording on the question literally says the action may be commenced. This is for Cplr 210A. If a person is entitled to commence an action dies, aka commencing the action would be the moving party, the plaintiff. So that's an option, either statute of limitations or within 1 year after person's death. So now we're going to go to the answer for the second question, which is regarding death of the would have been defendant, provides that the 18 months after the death of the person against whom a cause of action exists is not counted in the statute of limitations. Okay, thus 18 months is added onto whatever was left of the original period. This provision, and here they're stating it, is different from the death of the claimant provision in that it is not an alternative period. 18 months is always added onto the original period when a defendant passes away, aka the person against whom a cause of action exists. So I hope that makes sense. So you got the quick answers, you got the breakdown of the quizzer response, and now we're going to look at the actual CPLR. Let's break it down. You have Section 2010, death of claimant or person liable, cause of action accruing after death and before grant of letters. So the whole grant of letter things is going to be in Section 210, subdivision C, right? And the questions that we went over in the quizzers was subdivision A, which was regarding the claimant, and subdivision B, which is the person liable or the would have been defendant. Okay, so let's read it. So 210A, death of claimant, where a person entitled to commence an action dies before the expiration of the time within which the action must be commenced and the cause of action survives. An action may be commenced by his representative within 1 year after his death. There it is, 1 year. Claimant, 1 year after his death. Again, an action may be. It doesn't say must be, it says may be. And this is the whole thing that everyone always talks about. Be careful because they will try to get you on the test between must and may. So in this situation, there's an alternative. Remember what they said. Either whichever is longer, either the statute of limitations or the 1 year period. So there's a choice there. Okay, then we go to 210B, death of person liable, the period of 18 months after the death within or without the state. Remember that terminology? What is without the state? Someone who's not in New York State, or if the action accrued outside of the state of New York. So it's saying right there, the period of 18 months after the death, within or without the state of a person against whom a cause of action exists, is not a part of the time within which the action must be commenced against his executor or administrator. Must be. Okay, so that 18-month period is always going to happen with the statute of limitations for death of person liable, aka that would be defendant. Okay, C is not something that was in the questions, but I'm just going to read it because it's not that long, so why the hell not? It may be on the test. So this is 210C, and this is talking about if their shit gets like jacked up, their personal property, yada, yada, yada. Cause of action accruing after death and before grant of letters. I'm not sure this whole grant of letters things, but I'm gonna just read it anyway. So in an action by an executor or administrator, this is someone who's taking over so after someone dies, to recover personal property wrongfully taken after the death and before the issuance of letters, or to recover damages for taking, detaining, or injuring personal property within that period, the time within which the action must be commenced shall be computed from the time the letters are issued or from 3 years after the death, whichever event first occurs. Let me read that part one more time. So the time within which the action must be commenced shall be computed from the time the letters are issued or from 3 years after the death, whichever event first occurs. Any distributee, excuse me, next of kin, legatee or creditor who was under a disability prescribed in Section 208 is all about infancy, insanity, and like disability. So this is what it's referencing, Section 208. At the time of the cause of action accrued, may, not must, may, within 2 years after the disability ceases. So when their disability ceases, may within 2 years after the disability ceases, commence an action to recover such damages or the value of such property as he would have received upon page turner period. Oh, did I miss something here? Oh, yeah, sorry. Pages were stuck together. Come on. Final distribution of the estate if an action had been timely commenced by the executor or administrator. So this is basically 3 years you want to remember regarding this. Getting back that property that was wrongfully taken after someone's death. Or to recover damages for taking, detaining, or injuring personal property within that period. So this is within the period of the granting of letters. Hold on, I'm just quickly reading. Detaining or injuring personal property within a period of time within which the action shall be computed from the time the letters are issued or from 3 years after the death, right? And then if someone has a disability, they have the cause of action may within 2 years after disability ceases commence an action to recover damages. So that's 2 years after disability ceases, and that's Cplr 210 A, B, and C, the complete section.